I was driving down the road when I saw my daughter begging for money, holding my granddaughter in her arms, and she whispered to me with frightened eyes, "Dad, please go. They're watching us." That's when I realized her husband and his mother-in-law had orchestrated all of this. I just said, "Don't worry. Let me handle them." What I didn't know yet was how deep their plot went. They hadn't just stolen from her, they'd cornered her, hunted her down, pushed her to the breaking point, and I was going to make them pay for everything. But before we continue, let me know in the comments. Where are you watching this from? I want to know who's following this story with me. When you hit 66, you learn that silence isn't just golden, it's survival. That's what I craved as I drove home from Sunrise Hospital. That June afternoon, the doctor's words still ringing in my ears. "Thomas, your blood pressure spikes when you get agitated. You need to avoid stress." I turned off the AC despite the 105-degree heat. Sometimes discomfort clears your head better than comfort ever could. Charleston Boulevard stretched ahead, shimmering in waves of desert heat. Traffic crawled through the intersection at Rainbow. I stopped at the red light, my hands resting on the wheel mind, drifting to nothing in particular. That's when I saw her. A woman moving between cars, thin and ragged, her clothes stained and torn. Bare feet on asphalt hot enough to cook meat. She carried a baby strapped to her chest, a tiny thing with flushed cheeks and a head that lolled weakly against her shoulder. She moved from window to window, counting coins in her palm with desperate urgency. Not the casual counting of someone getting by. The frantic sorting of someone whose next meal depended on every quarter. I should have looked away. Las Vegas had plenty of people asking for help at intersections. But something made me look closer. She bent down to pick up a dropped coin, and I saw her face clearly for the first time. My chest seized. It was Jessica. My daughter. Jessica. The word exploded from my throat. I threw the car door open. She looked up, and her eyes went wide, not with relief, but with terror. "Dad!" "No, you can't. You have to go. Please." She backed away like I was the danger. "Get in the car," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Right now." "Dad, they're watching." "I don't care who's watching." I opened the passenger door. "Get in." She stood frozen, clutching the baby tighter. The infant whimpered a sound that tore through me. "Jessica," I softened. "Please, let me help you." Her face crumpled. Tears cut tracks through the grime on her cheeks. She glanced around frantically, then stumbled toward the car. She climbed in, the baby pressed against her chest. The little one's arms hung limp, drained by the heat. Jessica pulled the door shut and hunched down, trying to disappear into the seat. The light turned green. Cars honked behind me. I ignored them and pulled forward. For several blocks, neither of us spoke. Jessica's shoulders shook with silent sobs. She rocked the baby gently, whispering words I couldn't hear. I had 1,000 questions, but one burned hotter than all the others. One question that made no sense. One question that turned my confusion into something cold and sharp. I glanced at this woman who looked like a ghost of my daughter, the girl I'd raised, the daughter I'd given everything to. "Jessica," I said quietly, my voice cutting through the silence. "Where are the house and car I bought you?" She closed her eyes. Her whole body trembled, and then she answered. Jessica's answer came in broken whispers, and what she told me made my blood freeze. I drove without thinking, just putting distance between us and that intersection. Jessica sat hunched over, Sophie pressed against her chest. The baby had gone quiet, too quiet. "Tell me what happened," I said. "All of it." Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "The house is gone, Dad. The Mercedes. All 400,000 in savings. Everything you gave me." My jaw clenched. "Kyle. Kyle. Patricia. Garrett." She wiped her face with a filthy hand. 3 days after Sophie was born, Kyle came home with a gift. A silver bracelet engraved Sophie's mom. I cried, "Dad, I thought he was the most thoughtful husband." Her voice broke. Then he pulled out papers, said he was setting up an insurance policy for Sophie to protect her future. He just needed my signature. She looked at me with hollow eyes. I was exhausted. Sophie had been screaming all night. I hadn't slept in days. I signed without reading. What did you sign? Power of attorney. The words tasted like ash. I gave him control of everything. The house, the accounts, all of it. I felt something cold settle in my chest. After that, they put me to work. Her hands trembled. Every morning for 2 weeks, Garrett or Patricia would drive me to different intersections. They'd leave me there with Sophie. Told me if I didn't make $20, I wouldn't eat. They made you beg. They watched me dad. Patricia would park nearby to make sure I stayed. At night, they'd lock me in a back room. They took my phone. Said if I contacted you, they'd take Sophie and I'd never see her again. I had to pull the car over. My hands were shaking too hard to drive. Why didn't you run find help? Because they told me you'd have a heart attack if I showed up. Fresh tears cut through the grime on her face. They said you're 66 with high blood pressure, that the shock would kill you. Jessica, but that's not why I didn't come. She covered her face. The truth is, I was too ashamed. You warned me about Kyle, Dad. Remember? I did. 2 years ago. Her bringing him home for the first time. I don't trust him, Jessica. You never like anyone I date. He asks too many questions about money. You're being paranoid. And at her wedding, walking her down the aisle, it's not too late to change your mind. She'd smiled, like I was worrying over nothing. This is the happiest day of my life. You were right about him, she sobbed. You saw through him from the beginning. And I defended him. I called you paranoid. I hurt you. I turned to face her fully. You fell in love. That's not a crime. I lost everything you gave me. I don't care about a house or a car or money. I gripped her hand. You're alive. Sophie's alive. That's all that matters. My voice hardened. And I'm going to fix this. She looked at me like she was afraid to hope. I started driving again, this time with a destination. Henry Walsh's motel on Boulder Highway. Nothing fancy, but Henry was an old friend who knew how to keep quiet. When we pulled in, Henry took one look at Jessica and Sophie and handed me a key without questions. He brought water and towels, then disappeared. Jessica sank onto the bed, still holding Sophie. The baby finally relaxed in the cooler air, her tiny chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. I stood at the window, watching the parking lot. My mind was already racing through options, plans, next steps. For tonight, they were safe. But I knew Kyle wouldn't stop looking. That first night at Henry's motel, I didn't sleep. I sat in a chair by the door, watching the parking lot through a gap in the curtains, while Jessica and Sophie finally rested on the bed behind me. Every pair of headlights that swept past made my pulse jump. Morning came with desert heat already building. I left Jessica sleeping and drove to a nearby Walmart, buying basics, baby formula diapers, clean clothes, toiletries. When I returned, Jessica was awake, feeding Sophie with a bottle Henry had scrounged up from somewhere. Dad, she said quietly. Thank you. I just nodded. Words felt inadequate. Day 2 passed in careful quiet. Jessica showered for the first time in weeks. I watched Sophie while she slept afterward, the baby finally looking peaceful instead of distressed. The redness had faded from her cheeks. Her breathing was steady and soft. I spent those hours thinking, planning. Kyle had money connections and apparently no conscience. I couldn't just hide Jessica and hope he'd give up. Men like him didn't give up, they escalated. I needed help. Real help. A lawyer, maybe a private investigator. People who understood how to fight this kind of fight. But first, I needed to get Jessica somewhere more secure. Day 3 started like the previous one, quiet, almost peaceful. I'd just come back from getting breakfast when the knocking started. 3 sharp raps. Pause. 3 more. Jessica's head snapped up from where she sat with Sophie. Her face went white. Dad? I held up my hand. Stay quiet. The knocking came again, harder this time. Then a voice smooth and friendly in that way that immediately made my skin crawl. Mr. Graham, my name is Brett. I'm here on behalf of Kyle Richardson. There's been a family misunderstanding, and we'd like to talk it through. I moved to the door, but didn't open it. There's nothing to talk through. Sir, I understand emotions are running high, but Jessica is Kyle's wife. Sophie is his daughter. If we could just... Jessica doesn't want to see him. A pause. When Brett spoke again, the friendly tone had thinned. Mr. Graham Kyle has legal rights as Sophie's father. If you're harboring Jessica and preventing her from returning home, that could be considered interference with custody rights. Custody rights? I kept my voice level despite the rage building in my chest. Kyle kicked them out. That's not how Kyle tells it, sir. The threat was bare now. He says Jessica left voluntarily, abandoned the marriage. He's very concerned about Sophie's welfare, especially given that Jessica was found begging on the streets. My hand tightened on the doorknob. Here's what's going to happen, I said quietly. You're going to leave. You're going to tell Kyle that Jessica and Sophie are safe. And you're going to tell him if he comes near them again, he'll regret it. Brett chuckled. It was an ugly sound. Sir, you're an old man with a heart condition. Kyle has resources, lawyers, connections. He can make this very difficult for you. Get off my property. This isn't your property. It's a motel. Another pause. We'll find them again, Mr. Graham. And next time we might not be so polite. His footsteps retreated. A moment later I heard an engine start and fade away. I turned to find Jessica standing behind me. Sophie clutched tight against her chest. She was trembling. They know where we are, she whispered. Not for long. I grabbed my phone and called Henry. We need to leave. Now. Henry didn't ask questions. Within 15 minutes he had a back exit ready and assured me he'd tell anyone who asked that we'd checked out days ago. As I loaded Jessica and Sophie into the car, my mind was already working through the next steps. Kyle had found us once through luck or connections or sheer persistence. He'd find us again if we just kept running. I needed to stop running and start fighting back, but I couldn't do it alone. If they found us once, they'd find us again. And next time they might bring the police. Henderson was only 20 minutes from Las Vegas, but it felt like a different world. Quieter, safer. The apartment complex I'd arranged through an old colleague required key card access and had security cameras at every entrance. I walked Jessica and Sophie through the doors, showed her how to double lock it, and made her promise not to open it for anyone but me. Where are you going? She asked. To get help. Samuel Porter's law office sat in a professional building near the Clark County Courthouse in downtown Las Vegas. I'd known Sam for 15 years. We'd served on a nonprofit board together, back when I still had time for that sort of thing. He was sharp, methodical, and didn't waste time on pleasantries. When I walked into his office that afternoon, he took one look at my face and said, "Who do I need to bury?" I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, taking notes in neat handwriting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. You need more than a lawyer, Thomas. You need an investigator. He picked up his phone. Kenneth Morris. Best financial investigator I know. If Kyle moved that money, Kenneth will find the trail. 20 minutes later, Kenneth walked in, a man in his early 50s with gray hair and eyes that didn't miss anything. Sam gave him the abbreviated version. Kenneth nodded slowly. 400,000 doesn't disappear without leaving traces. Bank transfers, wire records, account changes. It's all there if you know where to look. He pulled out a tablet. I'll need Jessica's account information, dates, anything she remembers signing. She signed a power of attorney, I said. She thought it was insurance paperwork. That's fraud if they misrepresented what she was signing. Kenneth made a note. I'll also need to verify the property transfer on the house and the vehicle title. Sam tapped his pen on the desk. First things first, we file for a restraining order. Then we start building the case for fraud, coercion, and possible embezzlement. What about Sophie? I asked. Kyle's already making threats about custody. With what grounds that Jessica was homeless? Sam's expression hardened. We'll establish that she was homeless because Kyle made her homeless. Big difference. But we need witnesses. Anyone who saw what was happening. There's a volunteer, I said. Lauren Reed. She works with homeless outreach. She saw Jessica multiple times, tried to help. Kenneth wrote it down. I'll track her down. What's my timeline? I asked. Days, not weeks, Sam said. Kyle knows you have Jessica now. He'll either try to pressure her to come back, or he'll file something official to force the issue. We need to be ready before he does. I nodded, feeling the first stirrings of something I hadn't felt since finding Jessica at that intersection, Hope. As I stood to leave, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Your daughter is all over Facebook. People are asking questions. Better act fast before this gets uglier. I showed it to Sam. His jaw tightened. That's the other weapon, public opinion. He looked at Kenneth. How fast can you work? Fast, Kenneth said. But they've got a head start on the narrative. I walked out of that office with my mind racing. Kyle wasn't just coming after Jessica legally, he was coming after her reputation, making sure that even if we won in court, she'd lose in the eyes of everyone who knew her. As I left Samuel's office, my phone buzzed with a message that made my stomach drop. The message came through just after 8 that evening. I'd been sitting at the small kitchen table in the Henderson apartment, watching Jessica try to coax Sophie into drinking some milk when my phone buzzed against the laminate surface. A link. No message, just a Facebook video from someone I didn't recognize. I tapped it. The clip started shaky, filmed from a car window. I recognized the intersection immediately, Charleston and Rainbow. There was Jessica holding Sophie against her chest, standing in that brutal afternoon heat. The baby was crying. Jessica looked hollowed out, her face blank with exhaustion. Then the caption loaded beneath the video. This is my wife, Jessica Richardson. She abandoned our family, took our daughter and disappeared. She's mentally unstable and refuses help. If you see her, please contact me. I just want my baby home safe. Posted by Kyle Richardson. 2 hours ago. Already over 15,000 views. I felt the floor tilt under me. I scrolled down. The comment section was brutal. Someone wrote, "What kind of mother uses a baby to scam people?" Another said, "She looks like she's on drugs." Someone called CPS. A third, "I saw her yesterday. She's a professional beggar. Don't give her anything." And right near the top, highlighted by Facebook's algorithm, was a comment from Patricia Richardson. I've tried so hard to help her. She's been like this since Sophie was born. We gave her everything, but she kept pushing us away. Now she's putting that poor baby at risk, praying she gets the help she needs. Over 200 people had liked Patricia's comment. Dozens had replied with sympathy for Kyle and anger at Jessica. I heard a small sound from across the room. Jessica had seen my face. She set down Sophie's bottle and came over, her hands already shaking. "What is it?" I didn't want to show her, but she took the phone from my hand before I could stop her. She watched the video in silence. Then she read the comments. Her breath came faster. Her eyes went wide and wet. "They're saying I'm a bad mother," she whispered. "They're saying I'm using Sophie for money. They think I—" Her voice broke. She dropped into the chair beside me and pressed both hands over her mouth, trying to hold back the sob. "Everyone thinks I'm a monster." I pulled the phone away and set it face down on the table. I put my hand on her shoulder and felt her shaking under my palm. "They don't know the truth," I said quietly. "They don't know what Kyle did to you." "But they believe him," she choked out. 200 people believe him. I wanted to throw the phone through the window. I wanted to drive to Kyle's house and drag him into the street. But instead I picked up my phone again and dialed Samuel. He answered on the second ring. "I saw it," he said before I could speak. "It's already been shared over 400 times. We need to respond," I said, my voice tight. "We need to tell people what really happened." "No," Samuel said flatly. "We don't." "Samuel, Thomas, listen to me. If you respond now, you'll look defensive. You'll look desperate. Kyle wants you to fight him in public because he knows he can control that narrative. He's got Patricia backing him up. He's got sympathy. Every word he posts, every comment Patricia leaves, it's all evidence. It shows coordination. When we go to court, we'll use every single word against him. But right now, you stay silent. You let the video spread. You let Kyle think he's winning." I clenched my jaw. "So we just let him lie." "We let him dig his own grave," Samuel said. "And when the time is right, we bury him with the truth." I hated it. but I trusted Samuel. "Fine," I said. I hung up and opened my messages. I found Nathan Clark's name, the journalist I'd worked with years ago on a municipal corruption story. I typed 4 words. Not yet, but soon. Jessica had stopped crying. She was staring at the table, her face empty. "Everyone thinks I'm a liar," she said softly. "No," I said. "Everyone thinks they know the story. They don't, but they will." I sat with her until Sophie fell asleep. Then I moved to the chair by the door and stayed there through the night, my phone on my lap, refreshing Kyle's post every hour. 10 p.m. 22,000 views, midnight 31,000, 3 a.m. 43,000. By morning, the video had 50,000 views, and I knew Kyle's next move wouldn't be online. He'd come in person. The knock came just after 9 that evening. 3 hard raps against the apartment door. Precise. Deliberate. I was on my feet before the second knock finished. Jessica looked up from the couch, her eyes wide with fear. I moved to the door and looked through the peephole. A man stood in the hallway, tall, mid-30s, wearing a crisp button-down shirt. His face was calm, almost bored. "Mr. Graham," he said, his voice cold and measured. "I'm Garrett Richardson, Kyle's brother. I think we should talk." I didn't open the door. "We have nothing to talk about." "I disagree. You've taken Kyle's daughter. That's kidnapping in Nevada. And you're an old man interfering in a custody matter. That's dangerous. Get away from my door." Garrett smiled through the peephole, a thin, joyless expression. "You've had heart problems, haven't you, Mr. Graham? Stressful situations can be very hard on a man your age. Heart attacks still happen all the time, even to men who think they're being careful." My hand tightened on the doorframe. "You should think about your health. Because if something happened to you, Jessica would be all alone again. And Sophie would end up right back where she belongs." He straightened his collar. "Have a good evening, Mr. Graham." Then he walked down the hallway toward the elevator. I stood there, my pulse hammering. Jessica came up behind me. Sophie pressed against her shoulder. "Who was that?" "Kyle's brother, Garrett." I locked the deadbolt and the chain. He was trying to scare us, but my hands were shaking. 30 minutes later, my phone rang. "Kenneth Morris." I answered immediately. "Tell me you have something." "I do. Thomas, you need to sit down for this." I sat. "I got into Jessica's financial records," Kenneth said, "and I found a life insurance policy Kyle filed 3 days after Sophie was born. $500,000. Beneficiary Kyle Richardson. 100%. The room went very still. "He took out life insurance on Jessica," I said slowly. "Yes, and there's more." Kenneth's voice was grim. "I pulled Patricia's phone records, her GPS data. She was at that intersection every single day for 2 weeks. Charleston and Rainbow. She was watching Jessica beg. And I found text messages between Kyle and Brett. Kyle was paying him $500 a week to keep Jessica on the street, to make sure she stayed visible, to make sure she didn't go to a shelter." My vision narrowed. "They were hurting her," I said. "Exactly. They wanted Jessica out in the heat, exhausted, hopeless, waiting for her to break down, waiting for an accident, heat stroke, dehydration, or worse. And if she died, Kyle would collect $500,000 on top of everything he already stole." I couldn't speak. "Thomas, this wasn't just theft. This was attempted murder by neglect." I looked across the room. Jessica had gotten Sophie to sleep. She was curled up on the couch. Her eyes closed, her face peaceful. She looked so small. Kyle hadn't just taken her house, her car, her money. He'd tried to erase her. I stood and walked to the window, staring out at the lights of Henderson stretching across the desert. "Samuel needs to see this," I said, my voice cold and flat. "All of it. The insurance policy, the GPS data, the messages, everything." "I'm sending it to him now," Kenneth said. "Good." I pressed my hand against the glass. "Because I'm done playing defense. It's time to set a trap." I hung up and turned back toward Jessica, sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks. Kyle didn't just steal from her. He tried to erase her, and now I was going to make him pay for it. I arrived at the Starbucks on West Sahara Avenue at 10:45. Samuel was already there, sitting 3 tables away with a laptop open looking like any other remote worker. He didn't acknowledge me. I ordered a black coffee and sat near the back, my phone recording in my shirt pocket. At exactly 11 o'clock, Patricia Richardson walked through the door. She wore oversized sunglasses and a white linen blazer. Kyle followed behind her, his hands in his pockets, his expression smug. They sat down across from me without asking. "Mr. Graham," Patricia said, pulling off her sunglasses, "I'm glad you agreed to meet." I made my voice tired, defeated. "I just want to understand what happened." Patricia leaned forward, her tone dripping with false sympathy. "Jessica has been struggling for a long time. She's not well. She needs professional help." "What about the house I bought her?" I asked quietly. "The $700,000 house. Where is it now?" Patricia didn't hesitate. "That's family property now. Jessica signed the paperwork herself. Everything was legal." "And the car, the Mercedes?" Kyle spoke, his voice smooth. "Also family property. The money from Jessica's accounts was used for family business investments. Everything was done properly." $400,000, I said. "Gone." Patricia reached across the table and patted my hand. "Jessica made her choices. She signed the documents. And now she's using you to try to take back what she gave away." I pulled my hand back slowly. "What do you want from me?" "We want Sophie back where she belongs," Patricia said, her voice hardening, "with her father. And you need to stop interfering." Kyle leaned back, arms crossed. "You're an old man with health problems. You don't need this stress. Just bring Sophie back. We'll forget this whole thing." I stood up slowly, like my knees hurt. "I need to think about this," I said quietly. Patricia smiled. "Of course, but not too long." I walked out. Samuel followed 30 seconds later. "Did you get it?" I asked in the parking lot. He held up his phone. "Every word. Patricia admitting the house is family property. Kyle admitting he used the $400,000. All of it." My phone buzzed. A text from Kenneth. "Lauren Reed is ready to testify. She has photos of Patricia watching Jessica. And there's one more thing about Garrett. Call me." I looked at Samuel. "We have enough. More than enough. It's time to bring them in." I stared back at the Starbucks. Through the window, Patricia and Kyle were laughing about something. They had no idea what was coming. Kenneth's message about Garrett hinted at one final truth, but that would have to wait until we faced Kyle one last time. Kyle Richardson walked into Samuel's office at exactly 2 o'clock on day 11. He wore a tailored suit and an expression of calm confidence. He glanced around at Samuel, Kenneth, and me, then smiled. "Gentlemen," he said, sitting down, "I'm glad we can finally talk like civilized people." Samuel didn't smile back. He opened his laptop and turned it toward Kyle. "We're not here to talk. We're here to show you what we have." He pressed play. Patricia's voice filled the room. "That's family property now. Everything was legal." Then Kyle's voice. "The money was used for family business investments." Kyle's smile faltered. "You recorded us." "We did," Samuel said, "and that's just the beginning." Kenneth stepped forward and placed documents on the desk. Bank records. $400,000 transferred from Jessica's account 3 days after she signed what she thought was an insurance form. No authorization, just gone. Kyle leaned back. "Jessica gave me access." "No," Kenneth said. "She signed a power of attorney you disguised as life insurance, and your brother Garrett forged her signature 7 times on the house deed. The car title, bank forms, credit applications. That's fraud, forgery, identity theft." Kyle's face went pale. Kenneth pulled out another file. Life insurance policy, $500,000. Filed 3 days after Sophie was born. Beneficiary, Kyle Richardson. 100%. Kyle didn't speak. "Patricia's GPS shows she was at Charleston and Rainbow every day for 2 weeks watching Jessica beg," Kenneth continued. "And we have texts between you and Brett. You paid him $500 a week to keep Jessica on the street. You weren't just stealing from her, Kyle. You were waiting for her to die. The room went very quiet. Kyle gripped the armrests. You're twisting everything. The insurance was for the family's security. Then why is the beneficiary only you? Samuel asked. Not Sophie, not Jessica. Just you? Kyle opened his mouth, closed it. Samuel slid one more document across the desk. We filed a lawsuit this morning. Civil fraud, theft, conspiracy. We're also referring this to the district attorney for criminal charges. And I've frozen all assets, the house, the car, the accounts. Everything. Kyle stood up fast. We can work this out. I'll return the money. We can settle. Too late for that, Samuel said. I stood up and walked over until I was right in front of Kyle. You tried to erase my daughter, I said quietly. You stole everything I gave her. You forced her to beg in 105-degree heat with a baby. You paid people to watch her suffer. You took out life insurance on her like she was an investment. Kyle took a step back. You're done, I said. Kyle looked around the room one more time, then turned and walked to the door. His hand was shaking when he reached for the handle. He left without another word. Samuel exhaled and turned to me. It's not completely over yet. But Thomas, we just won the most important battle. I looked out the window. Down on the street, Kyle was walking to his car, his shoulders slumped, his confidence shattered. For the first time in 2 weeks, I could breathe. 3 months later, I drove past that same intersection, Charleston and Rainbow. The light turned red, and I stopped. It was October now, 80 degrees bearable after those brutal summer days. The lawsuit had succeeded. The house was returned to Jessica's name. The Mercedes recovered. Most of the $400,000 restored. Samuel had been relentless. Kenneth's evidence was airtight. Kyle and Patricia were under criminal investigation. Fraud, forgery, conspiracy, attempted exploitation. Garrett had been arrested trying to flee to Arizona. He was awaiting trial in county lockup. Brett testified against Kyle for a reduced sentence. He admitted everything, the $500 a week, the surveillance, the instructions to keep Jessica on the street. Nathan Clark published the whole story. It went viral with the truth this time. Las Vegas father exposes son-in-law's plot to steal daughter's life. Public outrage was overwhelming. Kyle and Patricia had lost everything. At the red light, I glanced right. There they were. Kyle held a cardboard sign, "Homeless Anything Helps." Patricia sat on the curb, hollow and exhausted. Designer clothes gone replaced by stained shirts and worn jeans. I thought about stopping, but I didn't. Kyle's eyes met mine. Recognition flickered, then shame. He looked away. The light turned green. I drove away. Karma works itself out. 20 minutes later, I pulled up to Jessica's apartment in Henderson. Small, clean safe. Hers. She had a remote data entry job. She was rebuilding slowly on her own terms. I knocked. Jessica opened the door, smiling. "Hey, Dad!" Behind her, Sophie came toddling across the room, arms stretched out. 13 months old now, steady on her feet. "Papa!" she babbled. I crouched and caught her. She laughed and patted my cheeks with tiny hands. I picked her up. She wrapped her arms around my neck, giggling. All the exhaustion, anger, fear melted away. This was why I'd fought, not for revenge, not for money, for this moment, for this child's laughter. Jessica stood beside me, hand on my shoulder. "Thank you, Dad," she said quietly, "for everything, for believing me, for fighting for us." I shook my head. "You don't need to thank me." "Yes, I do. You could have said, 'I told you so.' You could have made me feel worse about my choices. But you didn't. You just fought for me, like I still mattered. You've always mattered," I said. "You always will." Sophie squirmed, reaching for a stuffed bear on the couch. I set her down. She toddled over, grabbed it, and waved it triumphantly. Jessica watched her daughter with a proud smile. "I'm not going back to that house, Dad, even though it's mine again. I'm going to sell it. Start completely fresh." "Good," I said. "You don't need it. You've got everything you need right here. Her eyes shimmered. Yeah, I do. Sophie brought the bear to me, offering it with a gap-toothed grin. I took it and made it dance. She clapped her hands and laughed. This moment, right here. Not houses, not cars, not money, this family. Looking back on everything that happened, I realize how close I came to losing my daughter and granddaughter forever. If I hadn't been driving down Charleston Boulevard that afternoon, if I hadn't stopped at that red light, Jessica and Sophie might have disappeared into a system that doesn't always protect the vulnerable. This is one of those true stories that teaches us hard lessons. Don't ignore the warning signs when someone you love is in danger. Don't let pride or the words, "I told you so," stop you from helping family. And most importantly, don't ever assume that legal paperwork means someone has given up their rights willingly. Jessica signed those documents 3 days after giving birth, exhausted and trusting, never knowing she was signing away everything. God put me at that intersection for a reason. I believe that with all my heart. When I pray, I thank God for that red light, for Samuel's knowledge, for Kenneth's diligence. And I thank God that Sophie will grow up knowing she was worth fighting for. These grandpa stories aren't just about old men telling tales. They're about the battles we fight when everyone else has given up. They're about standing between evil and the people we love, even when we're tired, even when we're scared. If you're reading this and thinking about someone in your life who might be in trouble, a daughter, a sister, a friend, don't wait. Don't assume they'll ask for help. Sometimes the people suffering the most are too ashamed to reach out. This true story taught me that family isn't about being right. It's about being there. And if God gives you a chance to save someone, you take it, no matter what. Have you ever had to fight for someone you love? Share your story in the comments below. And if this grandpa's story touched your heart, please subscribe to this channel and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps us bring more true stories like this to light. God bless you all.